Hello, everyone. Welcome to Worcester Council, Worcester, what is it called? Worcester Commenters Union, Local 69, Book Club, number 2. Today we're reading chapters 2 and 3 for 8 hours. 8 hours for We Live. And it's going to be a fun time. We're here at Cordell's Coffee. We got a nice crowd in the room. And as it went last time, it was a little bit weird to do streaming and in person, but I'm going to be pretty much completely ignoring the stream, and we're having an in-person chat. If anybody that's in the room is also on the stream and you see something that's interesting to talk about in the comments in there, feel free to bring it into the room. Let's see here. Let me pull up. Oh, wait. Before I get into that, I have a couple events to plug. Bear with me. First, we have a ribbon cutting here at Cordell's Coffee for Rewind and Cordell's with Counselor Tell, everyone's favorite, and that's going to be on Wednesday, June 12th, and then there's C right there. Oh, the music's still playing? Jesus. I never stopped the music. That's awesome. That's great. Okay. Wednesday, June 12th, we have a ribbon cutting. And then on Friday, June 14th, we have Worcester Sucks birthday party. It's turning 4 years old. And we're having a nice little thing. Chris Robar's DJing. And it's going to be a fun time. So everyone come up to Redemption Rock on the 14th. And we'll have a nice time. Now, I hear myself coming through that camera over there, and I want to fix that. So let me just give me a second. Hopefully that's better. Sorry about that. Cool. Is that something? Whatever. So chapter two and 3 of this book is on the culture of the working class in the late 19th century. Chapter 2 goes over the rise of the saloon, which is probably my favorite part of the book overall. And chapter 3 deals with the 4th of July celebration and how that went down. So let's go to chapter 2, huh? Anybody have any sort of intro thoughts on chapter 2 that jump out at you right away before I get into all of my... I took a ton of notes on chapter 2 because I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting. Okay, that's a great place to start.
I'm one of these like stereotypical American guys who, had 3/4 of my family at some point came over from Ireland. So of course you think like that's a part of my heritage or whatever. And you learn it about it's stupid. But,
Right.
I don't know. Learned about the Shabeens.
Yeah, there should be
sort of like kitchen bars, like
Mhm.
by the widows, is like kind of a communal way of supporting them, but also having a place for working people to drink. This is like a different world we could live in.
Right.
It's just kind of like ruined by the commercialization of drinking establishments.
Yeah.
It's like just watching the way that like market forces encroached on these like old cultural traditions and gave us what we have today.
Right. Like imagine a world where it's just like one apartment in the apartment building is like where everyone goes and drinks.
It's like college.
Right. Yeah, it is like college.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Like that's kind of why, it's like, oh, that's happy back then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't even know my neighbors.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the women played a central role in the shebeens, where versus moving more to the saloon, all of a sudden, like, now women are excluded. So they said women could still show up from time to time, but they weren't allowed to partake in the treating and all that, and like, they were just like, women are just completely cut out of all this.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the notes that I made the most of, is that, like, or is it when they were talking about the shebeens, it was like the Irish people had like respect for the women that ran them, even though like the police thought that they were like dirty, no good sort of stuff, and that was sort of really interesting to see the way that like institutionalizing it, like, I don't know, institutionalize like the patriarchy of it, I guess, like like as soon as it became separated from home life, then all of a sudden it's a male dominated space. And I thought that was really cool. I want to focus on like the very first paragraph, because it starts with such a banger line here. That when they said the carpenters were skeptical, since a house raising without the stimulus of spirits had not before been done for many years. Most they hadn't. Listen, we don't build houses if we can't have a drink. We don't do that. That hasn't been done for many years. It's just so funny. Like that's the thing that I pulled out so many of those little moments from this chapter, because there's so many things where it's just like, you know, dudes rock, right? Like they just like people just wanted to get so drunk all the time, and they got so mad when like the temperance movement tried to put a clamp down on that. Where is it? Yeah. So the workers, upset that they couldn't drink to build this Washburn guy's house, said by their jeers, ridiculed the undertaking, and did their best to make it a failure. And that's just so cool. That's like classic Worcester mentality. Like going out of your way to make it worse. It's really fucking sick. Going on from there, the next thing that I pulled out was on page 36. Where was it? Drinking was a mandatory aspect of work.
So I definitely like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And like this is in the 1820s, sort of like before temperance movements and stuff. They recorded their payments for labor and grog, like the people who are paying these guys like wrote off the beer that they knew they had to give them. I just think that's so interesting. And in this line here, like Americans between 1970 and 1830 drank more alcoholic beverages than ever before or since. It's crazy. It's like this is a country founded on heavy drinking. Right. Yeah. And that's interesting, because there's a reason there's a temperance movement, because it seems like the drinking was just out of control. But at the same time, like the temperance movement is just like completely layered with this like class sort of thing, where it's like middle and upper class people are like differentiating themselves from the unwashed masses by sort of like how much less fun they had, right? Like it was kind of a lot like that.
I was thinking of that one, maybe kind of goes to the 4th of July part of it, but I don't know, I believe the upper class people, you don't necessarily practice what you preach when it comes to things like that. They act all temperate.
Right.
And, say, the workers can't drink on the job anymore. And, you have to have a temperate, respectful workplace. But it's like, I don't really believe that these guys would like abstain from alcohol.
No. And
maybe there are some true believers, but they have their private parties, and what do you think they were doing there?
Yeah, there's a line somewhere in here. I don't know, Corey, where it is right now, but where like the upper crust of Worcester had this like yellow label society or something where they kept the top shelf, the nice stuff for themselves, and that's all they drank, and they just did it in private because it just being drunk in public was uncouth, but like doing it in your in your home is okay. And there was a line in here that I found really interesting, sort of about how the saloons emerged almost because like it was impossible to have house parties in like the tenement housing that they were living in, so they needed this sort of third space for people to meet because it was too cramped to have house parties and stuff. But let's getting a little bit ahead of the material here. Let's see here. I have page 37 about the workers showing little interest at all in the temperance movement, which I thought was interesting. And then in the 1830s, like new rules against workplace and workday drinking spread in an uneven pace through innumerable trades and cities. By the late 19th century, most employers tended to view workplace drinking as part of a bygone era. And where is the line? Yeah, I think it's on the next page. They talk about the sewer workers, which I pulled out as being like some things never change. Yeah, right here. First full paragraph. As late as 1898, the superintendent of Worcester's sewer department accepted his workers' consumption of copious amounts of beer during their noon break because, quote, the men had a right to drink when off duty if they chose to do so. This is like, yes, that is 100,000% still happening. As somebody who's drank copious amounts of beer on his lunch break, I can tell you that tradition is alive and well. Yeah, so
I had never really considered how, like, oh, the workday is shorter now. Like, people just work all the time.
right.
So of course they're drinking while they're working because they're working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, and then like they shorten it to a 10-hour day. They're like, oh, well, now we have this boundary, so we're gonna get loaded afterwards. It's like, oh, that's how saloons started. Like people used to just drink all the time.
Right.
No matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I never thought about that.
Right. Like when the chapter starts, they're like, "Wow, what do you think about to build a house without drinking?" Like,
I was thinking about that, and I feel like they sort of touch on this a lot, but sort of alcohol consumption as a release valve for worker discontent.
right.
Especially in the context of like Worcester not really having a successful labor organizing history. All of that, frustration with your work and everything kind of has to be taken out in the saloon during these holidays. And, it's almost like workers can put up with a 12-hour day if they're allowed to drink throughout the whole thing. But then as soon as they're not allowed to do that, they demand a shorter working day so they can get all of the drinking out at the end of the day.
Right. And then the separation of like a shorter day and more wages led to like the separation of drinking from the workplace, and like that's what saloons emerged out of. And I think that's a really sort of interesting overall pattern to like consider, because it's like the whole culture of the city was shifted by like overall labor organizing that like might not have been that strong in Worcester, but led to like the 10-hour day sort of movements and stuff that just changed the shape of everything, not just work, which is very interesting. I'm getting so annoyed by the fact that I can hear that out of that. I really need to figure out a way to stop that.
It's like you can't mute it.
might be better now. Is it better now? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I hope so. Why is it so freaking annoying?
Oh, okay.
You know what we need? We need headphones. Plug those in the headphones. That goes away. Whatever. It's constant work in progress here. It seems a little bit better.
It does seem.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well.
But I think another thing that, like, you touched upon a little bit about, because the focus of the book is more on like leisure, you can go into how the nature of work is changing. Not only are the work days getting shorter, but we're starting to see the industrialization of our country that's happening in this time period. And so work is becoming more segmented, more mechanized.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're less socialized, you're kind of like at your station doing your job, and you're not as social as you might have been in other ways. And so, like, all of those things are happening at that same time. So, like, not only is your job becoming really just more boring, right? Like, you can't drink, you can't talk to your friends, you have to work at this one station and do this repetitive task over and over again. Like, that's been increasing. And so, yeah, the day was getting shorter, but the shorter day was also, like, more, I don't know, horrible.
Right.
And it is mentioned somewhere in there that the more mechanized industries were where drinking was cut off earlier than everything else.
Well, yeah, it had to be, so people wouldn't lose the limbs and everything else.
Right.
Not that stopped that.
It's still happening, right? Of course.
I'm sure it helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think you mentioned somewhere about like the immigrants coming over were from like predominantly rural places of like Ireland, Sweden, like you know, or Canadian, and so it's like much more of like you think about like harvest and like farming is so much more communal. It's much more like it's not you start working 8 every day. It depends on like so much other things like nature, you know, the seasons and things like that versus like a hyper like no every single day is the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And so like, drinking moves from being like a communal type of like celebratory thing again to a little bit of like in the 4th of July move like a you need to just because your day is shorter, but it's also like it sucks. It's right.
Yeah. Right.
It's more common.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? That was that's more in the chapter 3, but it's really interesting to consider like the moving from the rural to the industrial. Like their only holiday between April and November was July 4th. Like and like say what you will about rural peasants, but there's a lot of feasts going on. Like there's a lot of partying going on. So it turned to the 4th of July, as we'll get to, into what seems like a complete shit show, which is especially the Irish. It's like those damn Irish. No one had a good opinion of the Irish during this time, least of all the Irish. You know? Yeah, it's absolutely classic Irish behavior, and I can say that. So I'm trying to find. I wanted to talk a little bit about these shebeens before moving on to like more of the saloon stuff, because I thought that stuff was really really. Yes, it is. It is. Right. So, an investigator for the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 1875 found that a Worcester Irish laborer and his family of 8 living in a 4-room tenement, which provided only, quote, 2 privies for about 50 people. In such a setting, a shebeen was likely to be little more than a table and a few chairs set up in the kitchen or bedroom of a tenement or a 3-decker apartment. It's like I don't know, in the basement or something, or on the porch. And um, yeah, and the 1875 like liquor law license didn't immediately put an end to this, and that brings me to the thing that I really want to talk about, is that it seems like the police force grew exponentially alongside the demand to like crack down on drinking. Yeah, right here. So City Marshal Ansel Washburn complained. This is on page 42 towards the bottom. It is not hard to detect the places where the article is kept or sold, even though it be in privacy of kitchen or bedroom. Yet, as the law now stands, an officer, in attempting to force the same, would become a trespasser. So they were getting away with this, even though it was like nominally illegal, because like the cops just couldn't go into people's homes and arrest people for it.
I found that the sentence before that interesting too, where it's talking about the nature of search and seizure laws. And, you just think of like how we still deal with that today. We have like, knock warrants and all of like all of these laws that was our more modern iteration of like the drug wars. So this was the 1800s drug wars. And like, okay, yeah, we're still doing the same shit. People's rights, search and seizure laws.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
To another way, this might be time to put things together if I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to
Go for it.
The development into the saloon, the more community, the more market-based saloon kind of served as a way to extract the wealth out of the working people, because at least with the being like, not that they were getting liquor for free, but that money was going back into the community.
Right.
Rather, once that goes to help it crack down on it, you have to get a liquor license, and now all that money is going to the saloon owners, where they can then accumulate. Well, and on top of that, some of those saloon owners were first like, I'm working class, just like you, until the saloon becomes successful enough that they,
Right.
And in a sense, with the police force ballooning like that, that's an example of the police being used as a way to, have enforcement demands capital.
Right. Like create like the class distinction.
Yeah, basically, it's like, well, legal for you to pay for liquor from your neighbors, but instead legally you need to go to the one place in the neighborhood that's going to take all your money.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of walk back, all like, yeah, sure, you're getting paid more, but now all that money is going to one that you die.
Right. And what was it?
Yes, eventually. But one of the things I started was on page 48, where
Mm-hmm.
they said, one should not exaggerate the saloon keeper affluence. Very few, any substantial accumulations of wealth. Like, in fact, the bankers were like pissed that they weren't making enough money. Sure.
Eventually.
But I just thought it was so funny that at first they're like, these idiots are not making enough money.
Yeah, right.
They're like buying rounds for everyone and like not drinking away their profits.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting and like was very like a step towards this, it's like a step into this
anything in space it should be. I mean, it's what we have now.
and a bar.
A bar.
Right.
We sort of. It's like the hidden money.
But I just assumed based on nothing that people who open bars like to get the money out of these informal houses were like doing well at first, and they weren't interested in that. It changed after obviously, but
I really enjoyed a couple of mentions of people having their credit investigated because credit scores are terrible. But the idea that it would just be a guy in the community who got to write up this bitchy little report.
Yeah.
On the divorce splash, a little flashy.
Oh yeah, I remember that line being like, "What? Rather fond of horse flesh? I don't even know what that means." Page 50?
I think it actually just means like he's got nicer horses, like a better ride.
I
That
see.
makes it like he ought to spend money on. It does sound a little like.
As a guy like you, that's such a nice car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you for getting us over to page 50 because this is the thing that I have bolded and capitalized in my notes. I just have read the poem. At the top here, a nativist rhyme popular in Worcester after the Civil War captured the ethnic flavor of its drink trade. Quote, the Irish and the Dutch, they don't amount to much, for the mix have their whiskey and the Germans guzzle the beer. And all we Americans wish they had never come here. It's like, man, we just have not changed. Right. Yeah, it's just like really speaks to our current nativists that like whoever is not native is so flexible. Like who in their right mind would consider like would be nativist against the mix and the Germans, right? Like that's just totally from the bygone era. Like no, that wouldn't track for nativists now, but like whatever they are being, you know, racist and xenophobic against, it's like absolutely the same dynamic as it is now.
It was throwing me off reading those sections just seeing people refer to as Native Americans. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's gonna be a couple things.
Right.
They don't need-
No, yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah,
The guys who were like, yeah, sure, Native, you're Native, been here for like 100 years.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not 5,000 years.
Yeah, it means the Yankees. But yeah, if that term did throw me a couple times. I was like, I don't remember Native Americans getting discussed at all. But then I was like, oh, that's what they
Well, I
mean.
mean, one group of people that I noticed was not discussed were black people. Black people were here.
Oh, there's like
There's
one
like
mention.
no mention at all of what was going on with black people.
Yeah, that's true. The main focuses of this chapter are just the Irish, the Swedish, the French Canadian, and a little bit of the German, but you don't hear really anything else. And I don't know. If those were the dominant working class populations at the time, or if that was just like historical oversight and neglect that like no one else has captured in here. I don't know.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of
We
both.
did have a very vibrant black community here in the 1800s. There's been a lot of research on that, but then this book was written in the 80s by a white guy.
Right, exactly. So, yeah.
The current black community in Worcester is mostly immigrant. It's not mostly like descendants of enslaved people. There absolutely was a black community. So I think, I'm not saying this white guy didn't overlook a lot of stuff, but like there's just not the same makeup.
It was a small.
I mean, I mean,
For sure.
here, certainly got dispersed through urban renewal.
yeah, that's one of the things that I have great funding to look into this year is to do a big thing on 290 and the African American population.
There's a kind of get a little bit off topic in QCC. They had a photo exhibition. I'm forgetting the photographer's name, but he was a black photographer
Yes,
at
yep.
the time of like the turn of the last century,
Yeah.
like documenting this is.
Yeah, and that would have been this time period,
Yeah.
right? Like, so we know that there were, you know, there was
Even if it
this
was a
size.
small community, they were there. It was like fascinating.
Well, and I went to the index to see how many mentions there were, and there's 3.
Wow.
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 Yeah.
Are there?
Canadians only get 2 mentions though.
Oh.
So,
On 51, there is another good line about sort of like the condescension of working people who got drunk. Where I have it in my notes, but I want to find it in here. Oh yeah, in 1891, a temperance-minded publication, which is crazy that that's the thing. Like, how can you have so many publications that you have a temperance-minded publication? Like, yeah, I know. It's a different time.
You got all your like insane men's health influencers these days. People tell me you should do this, you should
Right.
this.
You got to drink mushroom powder instead of coffee, you know, that kind of stuff.
I mean, the temperance movement in the 1800s was huge. I mean, there was a reason why prohibition ended up getting passed.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that it started we're starting in New England so much sooner than it really is the 1830s, and then prohibition doesn't happen until the early 1900s. So
Yeah.
you're doing it first here.
Well, to go back to your point about the publication, I'm shocked at how many newspapers have already been mentioned.
Yeah, I know.
And are in chapter 2. Like,
Right.
everybody had, like, every Epsilon player had their own newspaper, and there was like a pro Laker newspaper. There was, I mean, like, that's cool because we have one newspaper right now.
Right,
in the
right.
US.
Yeah.
They mentioned in
The whole
the
country.
Yeah.
they mentioned in the, I think it was the 4th of July chapter, they were talking about how one of the papers was like pro-union,
Yeah.
and the anti-union one was Telegram and Gazette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was still around.
Right.
I think they're also the pro KKK newspaper in the city too.
Yeah. Yep. That's a crucial omission of this book in general is the KKK thing that happened in the 1920s. Well, it actually might be a little bit after the purview of this book,
It's
but
after the review.
yeah, because it was in like 1922 or something like that.
But I'm really curious as the book goes on if they mention anything about that, because I know the Swedish population was like very
Yeah.
heavily involved.
It was the Swedes against the Irish.
Yeah.
And it's just like it really expands your understanding of the KKK to think that like the Swedes could employ that against the Irish in the 1920s.
It's interesting because the revived KKK hearings are basically just a like that organization.
Right.
It's their, like, the focus.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think maybe in Worcester specifically or this like general area, it was like even unique within the KKK, and then it specifically, it would normally just have a question of are you a Native born American or something like that.
Right.
In this area, it's like are you a Native born American or like a Nordic American or something like that.
Yeah. It really makes a huge difference. And then like at the bottom of 51 here is one of the things that I really wanted to bring up. So the author pulls this 1881 Bureau of Statistics of Labor study about criminals where laborers were 3 times as likely to be excessive drinkers as clerks, and only 1/3 as likely to be total abstainers. Similarly, of those arrested for drunkenness in Worcester during June 1880, who could be located in that year's Worcester directory, almost 3/4 held unskilled or semi-skilled jobs. And that's just like, just pure classism. Like, it's not to say that people, the people getting arrested for excessive drinking were just poor people. Like, rich people weren't getting arrested for that. And that is also something that continues to this day.
Those open container laws.
Right, exactly.
If you're rich, you have a house that you can drink in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, with wealthy people, they have space. We just were reading about with poor people, they're living in cramped tenements, so of course they're gonna be out in public.
Right.
Because they don't have a place to go.
Yeah, and that's the same thing for the 4th of July celebrations. Like, those had to happen in public because they didn't have the means to, go to a nice farm in Leicester or like up to Mount Wachusett for a dog sled ride, which I thought was like, you did a dog sled ride at Mount Wachusett in the middle of July? What?
Yeah, it's like when it's snow.
I have no idea.
For some reason, it was colder.
And actually, it was a dog cart. So I guess it's like I guess back then they had like summer dog sledding. I don't know. But
I had to mention that they needed fun things to do.
right. So like that coming down on like the poorer people more for excessive drinking and public disorderness or whatever, like really impacted the Irish especially because they were concentrated in those like lower paying jobs. He says manual outdoor labor and transport that allowed and encouraged heavy drinking. So you can kind of see where like the stereotype of like the rowdy, drunk Irishman comes from is because the cops are cracking down on them more heavily than anybody else for public drunkenness. And that might really just be because they were more often in public, which is really an interesting thing to chew on. So going down here, some other things that I pulled out. I kind of appreciate that this scan we're working off has like somebody else's notes on it. It's I don't know.
They bracketed everything, which is help.
Yeah, I know. It's like there's pages where every single paragraph is bracketed, which is fine. But yeah. Sometimes I catch myself doing that when I'm reading something, and I'm like, "What am I doing? This is completely useless to future me." Yeah, yeah.
I bought a used textbook for college 1 year, and literally every single word was highlighted. I don't know use the words that we were trying to say.
Yeah. So there is a really cool quote here on page 54 about the saloon keeper as like a new emerging class who is a jolly fellow. Yeah. As a rule, observe the author of the locally published Saloon Keeper's Companion, which we have to find, by the way. That would be such an interesting text to dig up. The saloon keeper is a jolly, easygoing fellow, free with his money. Even Worcester temperance advocate Richard O'Flynn, with his hatred for the vendors of the deadly cup, found that's so tough. Yeah, what's up? We're vendors of the deadly cup. Yeah, right, exactly. Found the word genial to describe Worcester's rum cellars when he profiles them. And it's kind of it's cool to like just kind of see the early origins of bar culture in general, like this sort of like thing about like, because who's your favorite bartender now? It's like the guy who's like fun and sings songs and all this stuff, and like it's kind of like there's like a service industry culture going back all the way to this point.
So I found this in Keeper's Companion.
What?
The Library of Congress. The Library of Congress has digitized all 468 pages of it, I think.
Whoa!
And it was printed in Worcester.
No way!
Antiquarian Society must have.
Yeah, that's the next book.
We gotta do a field trip to the Antiquarian Society.
There you go,
They
yeah.
gotta have originals.
So yeah, if you just, I googled Saloon Keeper's Companion 1800s, and it's on the Library of Congress website. Yeah, so if anyone wants to read it.
Oh my god, I gotta throw that link in the chat. It's on, so it's just on the Library of Congress. You can just read it. Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it was like kind of a
Wow, that's
a lot of
awesome.
old stuff has been digitized, and like it's like older newspapers, and they're pretty easy to find.
Yeah,
If they've been digitized, they're like out of copyright, they're old enough, so a lot of historical societies or like government.
hmm
Thank God for libraries.
That's so cool that it was published in Worcester. That's because he doesn't even say that in here. This is published locally. So I was like, it's not as cool as it being published directly in Worcester or anything like that. It's probably in Fall River or something, but no, it was right here.
I like the jokes that they, the Saloon Keeper's Companion, like, basically offers up, and it is to ridicule hypocritical temperance advocates, dishonest police and politicians, unsophisticated youth who school clergy, churchgoers, and super accomplished judges, and I was like, wow, nothing's really changing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then there's another line further down where it's like the temperance guys were probably just mad that they were making fun of them all the time.
Yeah.
What page is that on? The 54 is where that quote is?
Yeah, it's just like, it's the paragraph below where you were reading.
Oh, okay, cool.
I say that the constant cultural conflict in America is the war on cool.
Right, yeah. Yeah, if you want to be among the upper crust, you have to position yourself as not cool. And actually, there was such a sick quote about that. It was like a public health a public health agent who was like, "Oh man, I wish I could just be like them, getting drunk all the time." Where is it? I gotta find
I
that.
don't remember that.
Yeah, I know that's a really good one. Oh man, we'll come across it.
I guess it was like, I was kind of surprised reading about like the start of the Saloon Keeper as like not necessarily like a kind of outside person that's been like kind of zeroing in on a market, that they kind of just grew organically out of a need, that most of them were blue collar workers who then were like, oh, there's this need now because, you know, it's shut down, they're not giving out like liquor licenses and all these other stuff, so it kind of grew out naturally or organically. And
Yeah.
they were able to keep this kind of working class spirit for a long time, like you were saying, Nikki, like, and they were able to hold on to that for a long time, which I thought was, you know, as a person like 2024, I'm like, oh, it must have been like some like greedy, like outside person being like, oh, let me like, I see a need in the market, let me like clamp down, but it was something that was like very organic.
Right.
You know, I mean, it started as like in a response to like, you know, shutting down these kind of like more communal like styles, like for like the sheep inn.
Right.
But it was able to kind of keep this communal like spirit alive with, you know, with a lot of changes to that. But it was I just didn't think that it was like that.
No, it's interesting. He spent some time talking about like the class distinction between saloon keepers and saloon patrons, and he had this line where I think it was like they might not have all been working class necessarily, but they were of the working culture. Sort of like they might have been like a little bit better off than the people around them, but they were still sort of looked down on by the Yankees. And
Yeah, I mean, most of them, he said, lived in the same building as their saloon.
Right.
Or like within the block, like 90% of them lived in the same building.
yeah. Oh, I found that quote. Speaking of skilled mechanics in 1883, this is on 47. The secretary of the New York Board of Health admitted that, quote, they all do what I would like to do now, and what I do a good deal of myself. They smoke a great deal, they drink considerable, more or less, and I think their families are extravagant. Such a weird thing to say. So cool. Their families are extravagant. I was like, what does that even mean? So funny.
My assumption is like big, right?
Right,
That's
right.
my assumption.
Yeah.
Those who says such a different vocabulary back then, too.
Right.
Like, everyone seems like a much better letter.
Yeah.
Like, you did more of it.
Yeah,
Casually.
that's for sure. So yeah, down to the saloon. So oh yeah, we gotta get to this stuff here. Page 58. There's a really interesting idea about the sort of the internal democracy of the saloon, where everyone was received with equal treatment and respect, and that there was an ethic of mutuality and reciprocity that differed from the market exchange mentality of the dominant society. All the collective and cooperative social relations were not exclusively property of the immigrant working class. The saloon was one of the few late 19th century institutions that publicly and symbolically celebrated these alternative values. So that kind of returns to this idea that is made over and over in this chapter, that like it's like a quiet resistance to like the coercive nature of industrialized capitalism and the society around them. And it manifested as just getting drunk and having cockfights and staying at the bar every night and doing this treating thing.
Maybe so sad.
Yeah.
And the treating culture and how that's just not a thing anymore. anymore, even though it feels like deep down that just feels like the way that we should relate to each other.
Right.
And that it had me thinking about whenever I go out with people, well, not every time, but in a lot of cases, especially with people you don't know as well, you pay for dinner and then instantly everyone gets to haggling over who's got a Venmo, who this amount of money, and like in my mind, I'm always just thinking, like, no, I'll get it, and then like next time we go out, you buy dinner, you buy drinks, but like everything is so focused on like the exact cost of the bill and being perfectly equal amongst each other.
Right.
Well, the treating culture, because no one was ever really made totally whole, it enforced just a constant need for reciprocity. You always owed someone else money, and they always owed you money. So therefore, you just kept supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
It was really sweet.
Yeah.
Sad that we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's like it was a holdover from an Irish, like long-standing Irish rural tradition that has just been slowly. Yeah, right. But I mean, I've been at a bar and like paid for a round or like paid for dinner and just been like, don't worry about it, I got it, and it's such a good feeling.
It feels so good.
Right. And haggling over like everyone putting down their cards to pay exactly it's like that's so frustrating. It's one of the most annoying
Well, I
things.
didn't actually get anything to drink, so I should pay my brother.
Right. Yeah,
It doesn't matter, man. We're all going to the same place.
I like completely dissociate when that starts happening. And I'm just like, okay, tell me what I owe. I'm not participating in this.
This section reminded me of the beginning of the chapter where Washburn needs to hire people to build his new house. And I was thinking about the rural tradition I grew up with, which was like a barn raising, which is where everybody's dad like helps build a barn and like put the walls up.
Yeah.
Like, there's a ton of beer. And like there's a cultural loss for people like Washburn because he just doesn't have friends who are willing to do that for him. It's like hiring movers because if you like
Right.
that your friends won't pick up your couch or whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. My grandfather was like that. He'd be like, "Oh, you need a deck? Oh, I got you. I'm building that
I
deck."
got this guy.
Yeah.
I got a guy.
Yeah. No, don't worry about it. I'll build the deck.
Yeah.
No, I'll be over at 6 a.m. Yeah.
I feel like the treating culture, like, it really, I see it in like sitcoms more than anything. Like, I got around, like, I watched like the entire series of Cheers.
Yeah.
Like, pretty recently, you know, and I'm like, everyone does like, oh, I you know, everyone's drinks on me this round or whatever. And, but yeah, it's not a common thing. Also, like, it's fucking expensive to go out now.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
proportionate to our salaries, like, I would love to know what a salary was and what the cost of like a pint of beer was in like the ratio.
Right.
The entire night.
And like, and if your wage is $10 a day and you're spending a nickel or whatever
Whatever the ratio. Yeah, ratio of
like,
beer.
sometimes I go out to eat and I'm like, I buy a cocktail and I'm like, that's almost an hour's worth of work.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I like make an okay living, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh my god, I just spent
An hour of your life.
an hour of my labor paid for this like mediocre cocktail.
Right.
And so I think there's like a little bit of that too. Like it just
Yeah.
inflation.
I don't know. I wonder that could be something that's
I'd
in
like to know what
that could be something that's in the saloon keeper's companion.
or
Honestly.
like a quick Google of like what's a pint of beer cost.
Right.
18, 20 or whatever. So,
Yeah.
Well, I remember the 4th of July chapter, it mentioned that the guy spent his yearly recreational budget of $8
Right.
on the 4th of July parade for his whole family. I'm like, oh my god, that's.
Yeah.
Well, what would that be today?
Oh, here's a good line. Page 61, second full paragraph. The saloon clashed with the values of industrial America, not just in its communality and mutuality, but also in its unwillingness of some patrons to endorse fully the work ethic of that society. It's like, yes, like literally being lazy and wanting to go to the bar and not wanting to work is like actually like a form of class resistance. Like,
Didn't really accomplish it.
didn't accomplish anything, but neither did anything else. The opportunities for slipping into a dram shop either on the way to work or from work, making it so much easier for the men to squander their wages, which means a lessening of their efficiency for us, which is like that's like how much of the temperance movement is due to like the bosses of someone, a company like Washburn and Moen being like, these workers are less effective, so we need to tamp down on drinking. Like, it's always positioned as a morality thing, but like how much of their bottom line played into it. And I feel like that's more important to them than the morality.
Morality is supposed to really cover for it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, if we had talked about the modern drug war, but it's like, you don't actually care about people smoking grass and doing heroin, they just want to watch our podcasts.
Right.
Every excuse to do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then the last paragraph, page 61, we see the origins of the avocado toast line of today. Temperance advocates repeatedly pointed out that the money spent on drink might instead go towards, quote, a modest working class home. The Worcester 5-cent savings banks, the poor man's bank, claimed a one-third increase in local deposits during one no-license year. It cannot be emphasized too strongly that the real estate holdings and savings account of the Newburyport laborers depended on underconsumption. Recreation luxury like drinking, for example, was out of the question. So that's literally just like, stop buying avocado toast and then you can get it home. And maybe that was like a little closer to being true back then, but probably not. And it's like, yeah, it's just,
Spend that money on beer, give it to us. You're right.
yeah, right. It's, yeah,
Exactly. This
yeah,
is-
we need some more mortgages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more about control than about caring how workers really think.
Right.
Even if there is like a bit of an underlying truth that like the saloon kind of extracts that money out of you, it's like they're not saying that of actual concern for.
Right. They just want to be doing the extracting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't give it to him. Give it to me.
So, page 64, getting to the end of this chapter, there was a really sort of interesting line to me about defensive posturing, and looking at the saloon through that lens of defensive posturing. And so bottom of the first paragraph. Unlike British workers who responded to industrialization with class combativity, Bodnar Slavic workers and Worcester saloon goers adopted a conservative defensive posture as the best means of coping with the new economic order. So it really was like coping more than combating it at the end of the day. And that was enough for people, like as seen by the fact that labor organizers had a hard time in the city.
Well, I question whether it was enough for people so much as it was what was possible.
Right.
I think in some ways it's kind of an admitting of defeat or a symptom of that.
Right.
It's coping.
Yeah.
Making the best of things.
Right.
I think there are similar things today, right? Like I think on, at least in the socialist left in the United States, right, there's this kind of like internecine debate between your sort of like mutual aid anarchists and your like class struggle like Marxists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Marxists are like, you gotta go out and like organize like a union, you know? And the anarchists are like, we can trade things amongst each other, you know what I mean?
Right.
I do kind of withdraw into our own little.
Yeah.
And I do think, and this is not to shit on mutual aid. I'm not against mutual aid.
You're right. Yeah. No,
You know what
I'm
I
with you.
mean?
Yeah,
But
I'm
I
with you.
think its horizon is so much lesser, I think, because fundamentally what you're doing is you're just saying, okay, the capitalist class, the owning class,
Right.
what have you, has all of this that we generated from labor, but they have all of this.
Yeah.
And we have this little now. And among ourselves, we're just going to trade this small bit of wealth and resources that we have to try to lessen inequalities or troubles that individuals among us are going through.
Right.
Versus this struggle through the labor movement, the socialist movement, economic, political struggle for the wealth that we create.
Yeah, that's and it's very interesting to sort of look at the saloon in that context as being in that sort of anarchistic mutual aid tradition, like treating, just like creating a space where it's not so bad as everywhere else.
It's funny because this is I feel like the paragraph where we kind of end on this note about the saloon as an act of resistance to this emerging capitalist and highly industrialized order, but then also reinforcing those values as well. Whereas for me, I feel like this just keeps happening again and again, where it's just we create these spaces where we feels no, it is resistance. You go where everyone's your friend, right? Everybody knows your name. But that is also reinforcing these highly patriarchal values and systems. It's moving commodity from, it's taking wealth literally out of the community and putting it in the hand of one person's pocket. And then so it is interesting to look at it as both as two things at once that are happening. And how it ends up, I feel like it's just reverberating throughout our time and this kind of thing. So
Right. Yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, that line there at the end, what the saloon was a form of both accommodation and resistance, because it did accommodate it. It made workers more compliant, right? Yeah. And it's I don't know, that's just a very sort of core friction. It's what do you do about that? And labor organizers back then didn't figure it out in Worcester, that's for sure.
I'm never one to praise the British, but they at least had the Luddites.
Right.
Yeah. They had to, try to at least try to destroy the mills that were going to put them out of work.
Yeah. Worcester is very much just oh, it's okay, I can get drunk.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This line that says the saloon did not openly confront or challenge the dominant society, so neither did it embrace the values and practices of that society. So everyone's saying it's this weird in between.
Yeah, it wasn't political. It wasn't confrontational. It didn't have a praxis or anything like that overt. But it's just kind of instinctually was we need to have a place that is not like the rest of this place.
That's why this chapter is so sad.
Yeah, and then you got even more grim about it, where it's how many places like that are there today? How many spaces are you interacting in where you're free of that and
Post-COVID,
Yeah.
more atomized than ever.
Yeah.
We were going that direction anyway, but it just
Right.
put the pedal to the metal in terms of people not having any kind of third place where you go to, you can just passively resist the way things are.
Right. Yeah. And it's then you start thinking about how much community is formed in online spaces, and online spaces are more inherently coercive and extractive places and heavily surveilled as a form of social expression than any bar could ever dream of being. Right. You don't have your face scanned and all of your information taken when you walk into a bar, right?
Well, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, true. Not yet. Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's that makes it even more sort of heavy to hang on. Is all right, these workers didn't do a lot with these bars besides have cool bars where they could hang out and have boxing fights and sing songs. But like, it's kind of, you know, are we even there? Are we even at that level?
People were just wanting to like hang out and have a good time. Like that's the natural instinct. Like if anything, I feel like this chapter illustrated just how unnatural the marketization of everything was for people.
Right.
People's first instinct was to, to treat each other, to not worry about the money, to just do what felt right. But now, I don't know, I guess the way capitalism has kind of changed our culture is deeply unnatural. I think that's why people are so, discontent.
Yeah, but like even just as we started off saying, like us three would be in that saloon, like we weren't allowed, you know.
True.
So
It wasn't even that, yeah.
Yeah.
that became a space, but like men got to have that space. So what happened to women? Like we talked
Right.
a little bit about them in the beginning with the shebeens and that whole idea, and then as soon as we moved to the saloons, we're just talking about the men and what the men are doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, what happened to the women? Like, what's going
Yeah,
on in
like I
their
remember
lives?
one
Right.
paragraph that just kind of talked about
Yeah.
women are just drinking a lot at home.
Yeah, I found that. It's on page. It's on.
They're not allowed to go anywhere.
They could come in to some places. I remember one paragraph said like they could come in, but they weren't like treated like everybody else.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to partake in the treatment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the middle of page 63. Sorry, did I cut somebody off?
Oh, I was gonna say there's that amazing mention of how there were like pictures of the blog dancers on the wall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know that's like a very sexy petticoat situation.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even imagine what it is. I get what.
Yeah. Get a load of those clogs. Yeah. This line here. Yeah. Woo. So middle of 63, some women, German and English immigrants, for example, did drink in the saloons, but these few exceptions emphasize the character of the saloon as, quote, essentially a male refuge, pervaded by a, quote, aura of freewheeling masculinity. The obsession with virility, with potency, with bodybuilding, with sports that characterized turn of the century America permeated the saloon. The saloon was about hospitality and manliness, and that extended to treating. One commentator served as a ritual of masculine renewal, which is a gross thing to say. It's just, I don't know what you mean, but I don't want to, you know? But yeah, that is it feels like something that like there could be an entire other sort of like riff on this or history of this that like centers like what were feminine spaces like in this moment, like, because we kind of only get from this like, oh, they drank at home, but like I feel like it can't be that simple, right? Like there has to be, I don't know, and like that's just, it seems like that's a lot harder to extract from the historical record because of, patriarchal assumptions that go back for a long time.
It's interesting. It's not really the focus of the book because it's on like the other side of things, on the later side of things.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a similar narrowing, I guess, of kind of like this sort of life of workers at this time happening too, because you also have, the decline of the Knights of Labor and then the rise of the unions that are becoming the American Federation of Labor. And the Knights of Labor, their ambition is to organize across race, gender, skilled, unskilled workers, and the AFL unions, like the carpenters who are mentioned, and others, the building trade, just generally building trades and others. I mean, they're almost exactly the opposite. They have no interest in organizing women, really. They have no interest in organizing workers who are white, and they are pretty much exclusively focused on organizing skilled workers, even within workplaces, just skilled workers.
Right.
So there's also this like narrow things happening there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think it's in the 4th of July chapter. It's like he makes a small mention, but about like all the seamstresses walking out because there was a circus in town and they wouldn't give them a day off. So it's like, we know that women were working; they were also like in the labor force. But like, what is their type of leisure out there? Like the saloon is very much like it is that type of narrowing, and so I'm curious what that even looks like, kind of thing. Because he mentioned that, like, among the Irish, at least male and female race in the late 19th century are remarkably close for drinking-related deaths. Like, they're still drinking, but like, where is that happening? Is it just in the home? Is it in like these small groups? Like, what's going on? Which I wish we did have more of that. But.
Yeah. I mean, you have to like not to like this is pure speculation, but you have to imagine that like that the grog shops or the what were they called? Shebeens were like sort of like a feminine space to some extent, like they're run by women and like did that
Same time.
right. But like did that go away or was
I guess
there
there-
something like that happening?
Some really overworked housewife with like a ton of kids underfoot that was spending more of her time serving a bunch of men in her home.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only way she can make money. I
Right.
don't think
Oh,
that
yeah.
was,
Right, that's,
like a space for female socialism
Sure,
necessarily.
sure. That's a way more accurate read, I would say.
And I
Yeah.
don't want to like side with the bad guys here. I think part of the popularity of the temperance movement, or I suspect it was that these women were probably quite lonely.
Mhm.
And being like, please close the saloon so that my spouse is like ever home and maybe he'll like entertain my 8 children for like 15 minutes.
Maybe sober for like a
Right.
Yes, and like maybe won't be drunk and like beat me up or whatever.
Exactly.
I think the temperance or
That's
like
exactly what
huge
temperance
problems
movement was about.
Yeah, that's
There were
what
a lot of women too, like.
Carrie Nation.
Yes.
We love Carrie Nation.
I don't know, when I was reading about the Shebeens, there's like a part of me as a parent who was like, so the kids are just hanging out.
Yeah.
It's like strange drunk
No, they're
men.
probably playing in the street, like
Yeah.
the dirty street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like a
Kids
can.
are- Or the kids are working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
none of it's good.
No, really not. It's good.
So I'm a nerd and I look at the footnotes.
Yeah.
Or the endnotes really, footnotes are different. So I looked at the endnotes and the endnote 76 on page 249, like there's some more citations about women in bars. I'm not gonna read these. But it does talk about like women in Fall River saloons, see these works.
Oh, okay, cool.
Like, here's this other piece that he's talking about. A lot of his footnotes or endnotes are just like, here's where I got the information, but then sometimes he editorializes them
Yeah.
or explains a little more. So I think they're worth looking at.
Yeah. I really haven't looked at them.
But I always look at them.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. But yeah, and then he says, Caravan notes that treating of men or women was still a taboo in the 1960s. Like this is just a little note, and he's like, here's a couple citations. So I think there's like, this is where he got some of his information, and I bet there's more about women.
Interesting to follow.
Yeah.
But it is there for
If
you
anyone
to
is
follow.
anyone is so motivated.
Or if anybody's having trouble finding those, I can help you find them.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna read them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I like to look at the endnotes.
Yeah, for sure.
If there's a little bit more of a note or.
Yeah. All right, so we're an hour 20. Let's move over to chapter 3 here, which I didn't personally like as much, but I still thought had a lot of interesting moments. This is the one about the 4th of July and the way that people celebrated the 4th of July. And it is a continuation of the theme of dudes rocking and being awesome and having a good time. Um, and you get a lot of that in this chapter. One of the quotes that I pulled out from page 71 was most disgraceful, according to the newspaper, was that one of the most prominent features of an American holiday is the marked tendency of so many persons to get gloriously drunk. And then on page 72, where is it? People are complaining about how working class holiday celebrations included such horrible things like drinking and fighting, but also, gasp, active games, lively socializing, noise making and fireworks, singing and dancing, and even relaxed talking.
The relaxed talk.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
How dare they talk in a relaxed fashion? To be out in public and not use your formal speech.
Oh yeah, I guess that's kind of what they mean by that.
Yeah, I think that's how I read it. Yeah.
Informal, just slang and swearing.
Swear.
Oh yeah, right. Oh,
Because
should
in my
I?
mind, I read like I just read it as like they're sitting and chatting, like this.
Relax talking. Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I like the parts about
Relaxed talking is for the home.
the pranks on the.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh my God, the pranks is so good.
I was like, if only they could have organized a little bit better and been a bit more serious about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like rolling a cannon up to the owners.
Yeah. That's
Like, they could have really done something in this city.
that is pretty like indicative of like a classic Worcester mediocrity, where it's like, oh, we like
90% of the way to what we should be doing right now.
yeah, like we assembled like we did actual guerrilla class warfare, but it was for laughs, you know.
They actually imagine this
That's
changing something.
Is it more sincere energy?
Yeah, right. So
It's like also though, it's that where it's just it's not a serious sort of thing, or it's something where it's very individualistic, you know.
yeah,
Like earlier in the book, right, it talks about Emma Goldman, Bergman, right, and
Mhm.
their just like anarchistic attack on who was it, Frick Clay, something like that, during the Homestead strike, where they just the two of them were like, we're just going to shoot this capitalist. And
Right.
that's going to invest the working class in this country with a revolutionary consciousness.
right.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's it. End of plan. Yeah.
There's a similar thing later, right, where, it's a judge from Worcester who sentences Sacco and Benzani to death.
Mhm.
And in Worcester, his house just mysteriously blows up.
Yeah. Right.
But-
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what I mean? It's not an organized collective action
Yeah.
by workers, by the working class in the city. It's just this very individualistic
Mhm.
sort of thing that doesn't actually affect any change in the class struggle.
Right.
I bet it felt pretty good.
It probably did feel very good.
I mean, it was probably just a group of people who got drunk enough that they were like, I hate my boss so much. Why don't we just go do this? And everyone was like, yeah.
I'm also got to be just thinking about how that it's so hard to get away with these days. I
Yeah,
don't
oh,
think anyone was ever convicted of a crime before the year like 1995.
Right. Yeah.
Cannon go by.
It's like, I mean, I figured it was this chapter or the one before when they're talking about the cops in Worcester, how there's just be like one police officer.
Yeah.
The first chapter, they had one watchman and he couldn't keep up with all of
So it's
this.
like, guys, this is your chance. You could have just taken this
It's
city.
like, oh,
Yeah.
here's where it started, here's where the expansion of police kicked in.
Yeah. Like just this line here from page 72 is useful to think about if somebody did this now, what the response would be, because you'd probably get you killed. Despite repeated efforts by the police to keep the city quiet until 4 a.m. on the 4th, crowds assembled as early as 8 p.m. the previous night to bang drums, blow tin horns, shoot powder pistols, and set off cannon crackers and torpedoes. It's like the SWAT team would get called. Like, literally, there would be riot cops
They
showing up.
lock all these guys up on like terrorism charges.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But down on 73 there, I just think that it's awesome that throughout the 1880s and 1890s, residents of Worcester's more affluent neighborhoods, especially the South End, which you don't hear about anymore, and the West Side, were the victims of pranks and vandalism on the night before the 4th, the unhinging of gates, shifting of signs, overturning of sheds. I don't even know what that means. Blocking of trolley tracks and ringing of doorbells.
They're playing these out dead.
Yeah. Pro-labor newspaper called them the palatial mansions of the nabobs of the South End. The pranksters had moved a tripe and pig's feet sign to the piazza of a wealthy real estate dealer. humor was like, again, dudes rock. Like, how could you think that that's funny? He's right. Oh, he's a real estate dealer. He sells tripe and pig's feet. So funny.
People in this town are doing that too.
Yeah. That part is really good. I do want to pull out the quote about the chasing of the grease pig because that's something that we should bring back, I think.
So, are you talking about on page 76?
Shade and lubricated thing.
Yes.
I highlighted the loyal women close their picnic with thanks to their hostess and this thinking of God be with you until we meet again. The AOH ended their 8 meetings picnic with the chasing of a greased pig.
Yeah.
I just wrote best line.
Yeah.
I think I love this contract.
Right. Like, okay, the ladies are done singing. Time to release the pig. Yeah. Who's got the grease? And everyone's just like, yeah. Spilling beer all over themselves like Stone Cold. Get the pig.
Oh man, I bet 1830 that was just the funniest thing
Oh,
I've
yeah.
ever seen.
Oh yeah.
I probably TikTok on that. Like, yeah.
I would chase the pig. Like, let's be real. I'd be the one chasing the pig. Like,
I could do it.
for a certainty. Yeah, for an absolute certainty, like, I'll get the pig. Watch it. Yeah.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. I would be so much be the hold my beer person in that situation. I really identify like deeply, like it's like an ancestral whisper in my ear. He's reading the phrase "chasing of a grease pig." I'm like, yes, that's me.
What did the AOH stand for again? It was like
Something.
ancient order of
Hibernia. Yeah.
Like that anymore.
Right. The ancient, not enough ancient orders, you know.
Well, also like the ancient order, when was it established? Like,
Right.
20 years before?
Yeah. Right.
Irish nationalists.
Yeah.
Well, it's well, it's not more ancient now.
This is tavern like never been.
It's down over on.
It's on Green Street. Yeah.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Oh, yes, okay.
It's got that weird like
It's a huge
metal
building.
thing on the front. Yeah. I've
I
never
think
seen
we
it.
know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I stand corrected. So, maybe the pig is still.
Yeah.
Maybe that's still.
Right. Page 77, I think there's a really interesting observation about like this sort of like vandalism and stuff that we've been talking about. Middle of the first full paragraph. On the simplest level, such behavior represented a release from or an implicit rejection of the discipline, order, hierarchy, and sobriety of the workday and workplace, and provided a vision of a less structured, less demanding, less constrained world. At times, it could also serve as a vehicle for expressing the hostility felt towards social betters and bosses whose rules governed on other days of the year. And that sort of goes back to what was brought up earlier about the difference between like a Marxist or anarchistic approach, where it's just like, this is one day of just complete anarchy, like do whatever you want. Stuff, and I'm sure it felt good, but like it's just a release valve. It's not organizing under anything. But it would have been so fun to chase the pig. So like that's the classic tension. You know, you've got you're right. We need to make room for the greased pig in our general strikes, right? Yeah. If it doesn't have a grease pig in it, I don't want to be a part of it. Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm drawing a hard line. So I thought it was fun that we've been focusing a lot on the Irish, but this chapter kind of gives an interesting glimpse into the difference between the Irish and the Swedes in particular, being like sort of the same, like coming up as like from the immigrant underclass at the same time. That the Irish had this sort of like impression of being like rough, hedonistic, unless they were compliant to the social order, and then they were respectable. But the Swedes, like they're, oh yeah, so page 81, there's this passage about like lace curtain Irish. Like you're either Irish or you're lace curtain Irish. So like there was like the emerging middle class of the Irish were like people who kind of like looked down on all the other Irish, like poo-pooed them a little bit. But the Swedes, which is on that same page there, cultivated like a different reputation for themselves by using their own newspapers, and they cultivated a reputation and reported evidence of Swedish sobriety with great pride in incidents of drunkenness with disbelief or disapproval. And central to this respectable working class identity was the prominent role played by the city's 8 Swedish Protestant churches. And it's like the Swedes became more socially acceptable and absorbed into the higher classes. I think kind of what's being said here is because they're like Protestant. Yeah.
They're Protestant, so they share that with the lost who are already here.
Right.
That's what I thought was fascinating with this chapter is bringing in the religion and like showing how that played these ethnic groups against each other on the one hand, but then also like reinforced like some of like, you know, what the upper classes wanted. So like kind of keeping people in line. So it was kind of like doing both of those things. But yeah, so, you know, the Irish and the French Canadian, you know, they're all Catholic.
Right.
They're looked down as less than, but the Swedish could have more proximity, if you will, to those who are the upper class because they were Protestants.
Right. And they were like more easily assimilated in that way. And they also like played the game more. Like page 82, like a Swedish American 4th of July celebration was like a church picnic, followed by a predictable formula: service at the church, a march to the picnic grounds, religious and patriotic remarks by the minister and the Sunday school superintendent, prayer, hymn singing, lunch, ice cream, and lemonade, and finally, informal games and sports. Rowdy or drunken behavior obviously had no place here. Even fireworks were frowned upon. And that's like, you know, that's wicked boring. That's not as cool. That's not as fun as what the Irish people were doing.
There's no grease pigs.
There's no grease pigs. There's not a fight every 15 minutes. They're not shooting cannon crackers at their bosses' houses, you know. And I think that's really interesting, especially when you consider that, you know, 50 years later, the Swedes would march against the Irish as the KKK. You know, like.
Perfect example of the weaponized modern model immigrant.
Mhm.
Like, why can't the rest of you be like the perfect Swede?
Yes.
Hanging out in the same circumstances and integrated so well.
Right.
Like, they still do that today.
Look at the Swedes drinking their lemonade. Shouldn't you be more like them? Right? Yeah. Yeah. That's, and like there's something in here detailing the material benefit of being the model immigrant.
I mean, these people were more often abandoned in the
Right.
I mean, just generally kind of more, I guess you could say, professionalized roles in the nature of metal trades companies in the area. You know, I mean, a big part of that was, you know, you had Jackson and John Jepson Morgan Company. I want to say more Emery Wheel Company. And he like specifically went to even just like, I think this particular part of Sweden and was like, basically, let me bring over like every person.
Yeah.
It's like down to something to Worcester.
Right.
And I mean, that gets them sort of into these like higher levels within Worcester's metal trades industry, and that's pretty significant. But
Right.
at the same time, and I think, you know, the author tries to like go into this too, it's like, there was still, you know, the Swedes weren't like monolithic in Worcester, and you know, he starts by talking about the Irish and the different visions for like St. Patrick's Day, or like, you know, this like rough and respectable,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Irish community in the city. But he also, you know, similarly is talking about this with the Swedes, and you know, he does give brief mention to like
Churched or unchurched. Yeah.
Well, also the Scandinavian Socialist Club.
Right. Yeah.
The Scandinavians, you know, Swedes and then also Finns,
Mm-hmm.
were like the base of the Socialist Party of America in Worcester.
Hmm.
So it's like
It's funny
a
how
weird, you
Right.
know. So
are they still around?
Yeah. That's
there are still Swedes in Worcester. But
Yeah.
that's the top of page 84. There's a list of a bunch of clubs, and the end of it is the Scandinavian Social Club. I didn't know that about the Scandinavian Social Club.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because even within the Socialist Party of America, the Scandinavians were left within the Socialist Party of America. Like they were on the revolutionary left of the party,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these people in Worcester and elsewhere in the country are the ones who are getting purged in like the 1917 to 1919 period and forming the Communist Party.
Right. That probably has something to do with the fact that I went to Copenhagen and it felt like I went 50 years into the future, right? So next to the Scandinavian Social Club is the, quote, Viking Council of the Mystic Brotherhood, which, I'm just going to be honest, sounds racist. It sounds racist.
Some people get a little bit too into Viking stuff.
Yeah.
No, that's like actually,
Yeah.
like, it's a huge problem.
Like, we're getting over to a black
Scandinavian, like.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Although I don't even know that I would necessarily put that under that sort of a thing, because I think just generally during this time period, there was an interest in these sorts of like fancy societies. Even
Yeah.
like the Knights of Labor, right? Like the Knights of Labor is conceived of, yeah, as a labor organization, but also as kind of almost like a secret society. It's like
Yeah.
lodges
They were called
and
knights.
the head of the union of
Yeah.
the Knights of Labor is called the Grand Master Workman.
Okay, yeah.
Similar to the rocks.
Right. Yeah, that's weird.
Everyone's getting really into occultism.
Right. The Masonic lodges and stuff, and, like
So the other
sundials.
has their occult
Yeah.
society. We should have our
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, I just read this other book about how Cleveland, like at this time, designed their city to align with like the solar equinox and stuff. Ain't it fun? It's a comic book, yeah. But yeah, so like after he describes the Swedes here, it gets into the French Canadians, and the French Canadians sound a lot more like the Irish than they do the Swedes, to my reading. Just get into, what page are we on here? 84. They generally demonstrated more of an ethnic than an American identity. And whoa, yeah, salute to the glorious children of Canada. Get out of here. Come on.
I thought it was interesting that he made the point about like French Canadians are already this like weird part of Canada. Like they're like already like in their own thing within their own country.
Right.
So they've sort of taken that with them to the United States. Like,
Yeah, that's interesting because they assimilated it once already somewhere else,
yeah,
a little
sort
further
of,
north.
because they have their language.
Yeah, right. That is true.
So
And that's why they're so rude to you in Montreal when you go there now.
Well, it's the French Canadian separatism justified by their ideology of survivance, extended even to a suspicion of their fellow Catholics of Irish extraction. This is too assimilationist. So
Right.
they were
Yeah.
we're skeptical of you because you're trying to fit in too much.
Right. And then, like, think about the problems that would have posed a labor organizer at the time, being like, hey, we need the Irish and the French Canadians to sign up on this. This is going to work. And both of them were like, nah, I'm not going to work with those guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is something that I just think is fundamentally weird, that the French Canadian had sports contests where the married men played the bachelors in baseball, and also fat men and old men competed in races. And then the kicker.
Challenge each other to nail driving and model racing.
Yes.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah, like that's along the lines. That's along the lines of the grease pig. And how cool
it's
that
like
is.
The grease pig for ladies.
Right. Yeah. Like just a bunch of nails and bottles on stumps, and you're just like smashing them with hammers. Pretty cool. Yeah. Can't lie. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Next book club.
Yeah. Next book club. We'll get a stump outside. Let's see here. So the next section is, I think this is the last section of the chapter, is on ethnic conflict and interclass alliance, which is seems to be an issue in Worcester perennially. First paragraph of that section ends. Even on Labor Day, the official trade union parade or picnic usually had to compete with often larger gatherings sponsored by Irish, French Canadian, or Swedish organizations. The Knights of Labor made the most ambitious and successful efforts at forging a class-based, as opposed to ethnic-based, social and recreational world in the late 19th century Worcester. And then that paragraph goes on to say that it sort of fizzled. And even the pro-labor Worcester Daily Times lamented the inability of the local Knights to organize fairs and excursions on the scale of other Massachusetts cities and towns. So it's like the labor organizing was just getting drowned out by the sort of, I don't even know if you can call it organizing, just like ethnic enclaves and like the culture, and just like wanting to adhere more to that than any sort of class-based movement.
It's kind of funny, the parallel between these two chapters that I've kind of been tossing around in my head is that, you know, with the old saloon culture / shipping culture, you can kind of look back on it with this very fond nostalgia, like what could have been, and then you realize it's like, oh, the saloon was totally excluded from this kind of thing. So it wasn't really that revolutionary, but the same way, it's like you look back at the old, gatherings for 4th of July, and you're like, oh, these are great acts of sort of like resistance against whatever certain, that they were held back by the fact that they were so nationalistic and like, stuck in their own enclaves. Like you can see that these like prejudices that weren't being addressed just held back these movements from becoming anything meaningful.
Right. And that's sort of exactly what he's getting at. First full paragraph, page 87. But whereas the AOH might imbue its members with a message of class struggle, that's the Hibernian, the Irish one. Some leaders of ethnic communities counseled the reverse. In 1880, for example, the French Canadian newspaper Le Travailleur ran a series of editorials on strikes. Although it allowed that some strikes were justified, it generally took the fatalistic view that there must be master and servant, rich and poor, patron and worker, and that therefore strikes reverse the divine order.
Love when people start talking about supervillains.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, it's like oh, the rights of kings.
Yeah,
Like,
The divine rights of bosses.
Yeah, I thought we left like I don't know, like.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause this is just more tied to like religious values because that
Yeah.
the right is divine. Like
Right.
that's how like
Yeah.
the Lord is king, and you know,
Yeah.
so it's more like from that perspective.
Right.
Right.
So to think of it like at the time, if you're like somebody who's with the AOH and the Knights of Labor, and you're trying to get the French Canadians on board with any sort of strike action, you have to contend against this like internal pressure of the ethnic enclave that is telling you that there must necessarily be master and servant, rich and poor, patron and worker, right? Like it's like it's a baked in counter pressure that proved pretty effective, it seems, from the conclusions getting drawn here. Yeah, and then after that, there's talk of the failure to create a class-based social life, and the hostility of some ethnic leaders were intra-ethnic tensions and interclass ties that are ethnically based, social life fostered. That's sort of what we're seeing with like the Swedes poo-pooing the Irish and the French Canadians not wanting to work with the Irish, and
No one wants to work with the Irish.
right, yeah, tell me about it. And like I don't that's an awfully deeply entrenched and hard thing to get around. I don't even know how you would.
Does he talk at all about language differences among these different groups and how well the average person could just they can communicate with each other?
He didn't
I
really
think
go into detail about it.
They talked about it in like the intro about
Yeah.
one of the labor organizations just being spoken in else's
Yeah.
language.
Like,
Right.
You mentioned the Swedes and the French Canadians like wanted to maintain their language.
Mm-hmm.
The Swedes were more assimilationists that still wanted to maintain their language. But he didn't really go into detail about like could people communicate across. And I think in the first chapter too, they talked about how like the Swedes worked and lived here, the Irish worked and lived here. So
Yeah.
they didn't actually even like cross over that much, probably to even have to communicate with each other. Which
Yeah.
I guess.
There's no reason to either Jew.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I only know one language and I'm living with these guys.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess this isn't Worcester specific, but it just makes me think of like, obviously this was a problem elsewhere in the country as well. And I just remember reading about this really interesting case where I think in Chicago, there was some factory or some packing house or whatever, where they had these variety of different workers from different backgrounds, spoke different languages. And one of the ways that they were able to unionize this place in the 1930s was there was one worker who had been in World War I and had been captured, taken to Poland in some sort of modern day Poland,
Right.
in some sort of prisoner of war camp or what have you. And this was a black worker, and he came back speaking Polish, and he would go into the plant and give these like rousing speeches in Polish to the Polish workers, and they all loved it.
Yeah, and they were like, whoa.
Never seen anything.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's it just if only we could have had that person in Worcester. The Irish French speaker.
But he doesn't talk about like were there people that could do that, right? And
Right.
just failed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
He doesn't
that
really go into that.
it doesn't come up.
The impression I get is that there weren't really people who knew other languages. That's just like the vibe he gives off.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. based
Right.
on his
That's the standard American way of doing things. Is you just
Sure.
don't bother to learn.
Yeah.
Now, one guy only learned the language because he had to because he was in the prisoner of war.
Right.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because with that story, right, it's not even like that person, that future, worker upon return, even learned it from other Polish Americans, Like,
Right.
That's literally how separate things are. And, I mean, you think about even just like people who at this time, they were like veterans from the Civil War, right? Largely, the regiments during the Civil War were separated into like there's the Massachusetts Regiment that was like the Irish Regiment, and like so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. That's true. That's very true. And then I think that it's interesting almost to look at it in like a sort of like colonization or like colonial strategy type of lens. Middle of '88, Worcester employers, particularly those like Washburn and Moen, who employed large numbers of Swedes, gave active support to Swedish cultural activities. They like threw $300 to building them a new chapel. They gave them uniforms for the Scandinavian Music Corps, and they like established like by doing that like one group that had favor more than the others. And that's sort of like an elite cultivation of the Swedes, and then like that's also like a pretty effective way to divide a worker population is by making one of three factions that we have in this narrative feel like they're above the other two, right? And it's hard to imagine that they weren't doing that on purpose.
The $300 is the equivalent of giving $10,000.
Phew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's serious money.
Yeah.
I
was like, is that a lot? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it is.
Right. Right. Washburn and Moen may have been substituting Swedes for Irishmen on the grounds that they work for less money and would worship at the same church with their employers. So they were like intentionally picking Swedes, I guess.
Yeah, they were building them up as the model minority.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then employers were working on the religious racket in order to keep Swedes within the Republican Party and away from voting for men who had sympathy with labor. Yeah, it's like if you just poach one of the groups that comprise the population, then you don't really even need to worry about the other two. It's like settlers of Catan. And then, right. So naturally, on page 89, this hostility between the Swedes and the Irish, or the Yankees and the Irish for that matter, resulted from deep-seated ethnic and religious antagonisms, as well as employer manipulation. And does he get into the KKK thing here?
I don't think he's messed up the KKK at all.
Nah.
Oh, here. No.
I thought I
He
saw
did
it.
talk about anti-Irish jokes that appeared in the French-Canadian press. I was like, oh man, could you imagine just like...
Yeah. They're going to be just as good as that that poem we read earlier about the mix and the Germans. Yeah.
There was like some real pettiness too. I kind of chuckled, like the French newspaper complained of the unwillingness of the Irish to use its pages to invite French Canadians to Irish church bazaars.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
That's like what you're mad about? But maybe that was a big deal. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, how dare these people that I go out of my way to avoid and actively loathe?
Yeah.
How dare they not invite me to their church bazaar?
Right.
Who wouldn't want to go to a church bazaar?
The Swedes are champing up that to go. I don't know.
Right. The Swedes get to go. Well, why don't we do? So this is like sort of bringing it to the conclusion here. The July 4th celebrations in particular, and ethnic, working class, and social cultural life in general, thus provided an ambiguous resource for Worcester's working class. I think that's kind of like the main theme of what we've talked about today, is both of these things just being completely ambiguous resources, like releasing a safety valve or a pressure valve rather, but like not really being effective in terms of building solidarity or like cross-class struggle or anything like that. Yeah, and that's sort of like the concluding statement of this, I think, on page 90. As a result, workers found themselves divided against each other, not only on the 4th, but also at the ballot box, on the picket line, and on the shop floor. Whereas working class celebrations of the 4th eased the pain of life under an exploitative economic system, they also suggested the difficulty of changing that system. And that's sort of the dour note that he leaves us on for that one. And it's like, yeah, I guess we're still grappling with that question today. Have we got much farther at all? Even? Yeah. But I don't know. I thought these chapters were fun. I think that we need to bring back chasing grease pigs, and also what was it? Driving nails and breaking bottles.
Yeah.
The French.
For ladies.
Only ladies only.
Yeah,
Ladies, yeah, no, just like just ringed off with caution tape and just a sign that says "No boys allowed." Only the ladies can drive the nails and break the bottles. Yeah.
I understand like how he's really laying out how the labor movement didn't happen here in the same way, but it's just like it's still boggling my mind. Like he's literally writing a book on this, and I'm still like, oh, why?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Why? Why couldn't they get past it?
There
Right.
was a quote that I wanted to pull out on page 86 where he said there was a benefit for Fall River strikers that produced a $20 deficit that happened in Worcester, but by contrast, same day, the socialists in Detroit got 2,000 workers and families to attend an event. Like,
Yeah.
Detroit had the secret sauce that Worcester did not.
Right.
Although, and he doesn't really talk about this, it is worth noting that the socialist movement at this time in the United States, including the Socialist Labor Party, which he specifically refers to here, was almost entirely Germans. Like almost exclusively Germans.
Interesting.
To
Oh.
the point where even the Socialist Labor Party in this period, they for a number of years were unable to even publish an English publication or keep English minutes at their conventions because everyone was speaking German.
That's interesting.
Fascinating.
A rare
Yeah,
instance.
Was that like 48ers or was that before that?
There were some of those people, and there were also people coming here.
A rare instance of needing more Germans.
Back in the day.
Usually you don't want.
well, all
You
that-
just kind of like say no
all the guys
thanks.
getting chased out of Europe were being
Right.
chased out for a reason. It was because they were too
Yeah.
socialists.
And another thing that I come back to with that sort of like deep why question is also just like that there were no really big shops in Worcester. That it was a collection of smaller.
Yeah.
sh-
It's not like the auto workers.
right.
It's like
There wasn't like a Ford
Yeah.
or
We only do textile here.
Or there even wasn't something like General Electric in like Pittsfield.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like General Electric essentially employed or was in the families of people it was employing like half the population of Pittsfield.
Right.
You know, there's not something like that.
Because it was like a bunch of connected, powerful families with relatively small companies that made them
Yeah.
wealthy. They like it was. I think that actually is like a really big reason why it was so easy to like just start hiring more Swedes and less Irish, and you got nothing to worry about, right? Like that's what Washburn and Moen did.
More organized than the lower class.
Yes, extremely so. Yeah.
I feel like both chapters kind of like left me like sitting in this like almost like duality of like these things that are created by these groups in order to deal with both like these circumstances in the society, but then also reinforcing all of the negative traits of that society and like not really having the means to really resolve that tension and move forward. And the only ones who can really do that are the people who are outside of that, who are usually like middle and upper class, to be like, well, there is that. And then like, I don't know. It's just like both of those kind of left me like sitting with this feeling of like, how do you resolve that tension
Yeah.
in between like both sitting in like
Oops.
almost, I don't want to say like backwards because that has like a bad connotation, but sitting in like these kind of like older ancestral ways, but then also being like torn with this like new society that's progressing forward and like being unable to resolve that. And I don't know how.
Right.
Like,
But it's a big question.
it's a big question.
Yeah.
It's like I, you know, it would help if there were like some type of, I don't know. I don't know if they could have resolved those things themselves. I don't know. It's just weird. I don't know. I'm rambling.
Yeah.
But
No, I know, but
Yeah, I don't want to give him too hard of a time. I don't know if I would have done any better.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah.
For sure.
I don't think that we really are doing much better right now, frankly.
But I'm-
Like in
and
a
the,
lot.
the big industries that could have had a unified working base are even more like atomized.
It got completely gone. Yeah. There's
There's barely any industry left.
right. There's no manufacturing. It's just
What's that
There
factor?
is manufacturing.
There is.
no, I know, but
Definitely not.
it's
as much.
not on the same level. I mean,
I mean, it's unfortunate because you see, it was either during the course of or right after World War II, like Lyman Gordon was unionized steel workers.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's in this period where the steel industry in the United States is just about
Yeah.
this massive decline.
Right.
Something I think about with, I mean, what could unify lower class people in Worcester specifically, because, people don't work the same jobs, but if I kick around in my head, it's like, well, what's mostly everyone doing in this town? They're renting.
right.
There's an
Yeah.
example of, tenants unions.
Yeah.
The guys would be like, does Worcester even
Ten-
have a tenants union? Like,
I think there might be a group. It's a small group. I think there might be. I don't know. I'm
They're fun.
defunct now. Okay.
And that was one of them.
Yeah.
So there was a group of
Okay.
like neighbor to neighbor.
Yeah.
Looking at that, because like neighbor to neighbor was working in Holyoke and they've got a tenants union going there, but
Yeah.
but it's almost like there's maybe room for that, because that is what is.
Yeah.
And that's what most working people in Worcester have in common, is the fact that they got big rent.
Right.
I do think though that is, I don't view that as a very promising path. For the primary reason that I think it's not very scalable. You think about like the Teamsters or like the UAW union, just pay reform movements to try to transform them into these like more class struggle oriented, like militant democratic unions. They've got like hundreds of thousands, maybe like 1 million members, right?
Mm.
Where's the tenant union in this country that has like 400,000 members?
Right. Right.
We're gonna start that.
Yeah.
Something that's just never been able to be scalable.
Yeah. Because it's just there's a missing like intuitive piece to it. 'Cause it's like landlords aren't a
People don't want to talk to the neighbors.
right.
And
Right.
also though, where is the landlord that has 400,000 tenants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's not one property owner in all of Worcester, there's a bunch of little management companies.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be their own little, like,
But
I saw on TikTok I can make some passive income by buying up a couple rental properties.
yeah. Yeah.
And, this is also part of the reason, right, why like there aren't like massive labor unions. Before the rise of like industrial capitalism in this country, that's bringing like thousands of workers together in these big workplaces, and that are growing into these like massive national corporations, right?
Oh, it's Amazon.
Right. I mean, on a positive note, like sentiment is good, and the nurses' strike was like very significant, and that's because that's one of the biggest employers in Worcester right now,
That's
right?
kind of-
Yeah.
You think, where is the industry? It's in
Yeah.
healthcare.
Yeah.
And that's what is employing a lot of people.
There's been a big wave of teacher strikes too. in
Yeah.
Massachusetts,
Right,
which
for
has
sure.
been Really cool to see. It's been really cool to see too, because it's illegal for them to strike.
Right.
The fact that they're like, fuck you, I'm gonna strike anyway. Like,
Yeah.
That's how bad things are. Like,
Yeah.
It's been great to see a wave of strikes.
I'm in MTA. We can talk
Oh,
about
because
that.
so am I. Yeah.
It's something we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Is that going to happen again? Like, what do we do?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with Worcester, the situation next year is going to be pretty untenable. It's 160 teacher cuts.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like that's a good place to leave it here for today. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
Ways to kick around.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so thank you for everyone for coming out. What are we doing next month? We'll be doing next section. We'll be doing the next section, which is section 3, which is on the conflict over parks, saloons, and 4th of July. So this is sort of like the punchline to what we set up here. So maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe just for the three.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's a
Yeah.
lot to read, but just so people know.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. There's just we could bang out the rest of the book at the next one too, but I don't know. We'll leave that up. Maybe I'll put like a poll question or something,
Maybe.
because the part 4 is not very long at all. It's like 50 pages. Yeah. Or no, wait.
Less than like 45.
Yeah. So I don't
Then
know.
we can read the endnotes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. So we'll do part 3 next time, and then the time after that we'll do part 4. We'll read the end notes, and then we'll fill it in with the Saloon Keeper's the Saloon Keeper's companion.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna browse through it at work tomorrow.
Yeah. I feel like I need to like go to the Library of Congress and like touch it with my own
Really cool.
hands.
The building is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, they gotta have it at the Antiquarian Society.
They
Oh,
probably-
right.
they
Yeah.
probably do.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna take a look at that too.
Oh wait, Antiquarian Society, they like stop at 18 something. They like
Yeah.
don't collect.
Go. Yeah, I think they're supposed to go to the. mostly
No, they
to
stop
Bellevue.
like they're like 1700s,
Oh,
1600s.
okay.
They
No,
like
that's
stop
not
at
it.
like 18 something.
They're into
Yeah.
Allen, so they go up to the.
They go to
Civil War.
oh okay.
But I think they still have some stuff after that though too. Particularly if it's something.
I feel like a
that's
Worcester
here.
publication they might have it.
What about the Western Historical Museum?
Yeah.
It's possible.
They do have a
Over
local
the
library.
library.
Well, I mean, and Bill Wallace was mentioned in here, so, you know.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right in the intro.
He was